Payroll. You've got two options: tackle it yourself or hand it off to the pros. In this episode, we'll talk about both. And I'll bet you have a clear favorite by the end. Hi entrepreneurs, I'm Vicky Brown, and you're in the right place if you want to engage your team, boost your business, and grow your leadership muscle. So, you found the perfect person to join your team. Well, that's awesome. But now comes the tricky part. You've got to pay them. So let's take a look at your options for setting up payroll. Number one, you can go the DIY route, either with or without software. Or number two, you can pass it off to a pro, meaning an accountant or payroll service. Now, let me save you some headaches right off the bat. If you're thinking about doing payroll in-house without specialized software, well, just don't. Trust me, it's a minefield of complications. Take California, for example. Our pay stub requirements alone are enough to make your head spin. You need company ID numbers, itemized pay rates, specific date ranges, and don't even get me started on sick time accrual notices. The bottom line, you need software support, at the very least. Now, before you cut that first check, you've got some homework to take care of. You'll need to get your EIN. This is your employer identification number from the IRS. You'll need it for taxes and other official documents. And then there's the state ID. In addition to the feds, you'll have to register with your state. Again, in California, you'd go through the Employment Development Department, or EDD. And another big ticket item, workers' compensation insurance. Listen, this isn't optional, folks. You need insurance to cover workplace injuries or illnesses. Some states even have programs to help new employers get started. But either way, you have to have it. There is no wiggle room. Now, every time you run payroll, you're dealing with two main categories. The employee's gross wages, that's their salary before taxes or withholding amounts are taken, and the employer taxes. And this includes things like Social Security, Medicare, unemployment insurance, and any other state taxes. Now, on the employee side, you'll be handling federal and state income tax, state disability if it applies, and the employee's portion of Social Security and Medicare. Now, generally, you'll be reporting and paying these taxes quarterly. If you go the DIY route with software, make sure you understand if they're handling the filings for you or if that's still on your plate. Remember, even if someone else is doing the paperwork, you're still on the hook if something goes wrong. Now, on to the nitty-gritty of actually running payroll. First decision, how often? You've got weekly, bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, or semi-monthly, twice a month options. Weekly tends to be a very rare option, that is outside of certain industries like restaurants. What's more common? Well, bi-weekly or semi-monthly. But here's a crucial point. Bi-weekly and semi-monthly are not the same thing. Bi-weekly means 26 payrolls a year, while semi-monthly is 24. Now, this affects not just how often you pay, but how much you pay each time. Semi-monthly can get tricky because months aren't all the same length. You might need to calculate a daily rate to keep things fair. It's doable, but it's definitely more complex. And don't forget about pay periods and payroll in arrears. So, what the heck is that? Well, the pay period is the working time you're paying for. Since it takes a bit of time to process payroll, things like gathering time cards and putting the data in the system and running the calculations and cutting the checks and processing the direct deposits, blah, blah, blah. Generally, there's going to be a few days break between the end of the pay period and the actual pay date. This is called payroll in arrears, and it's the most common payroll processing method. So, for a bi-weekly payroll, usually the pay period cutoff is the week before the pay date. For example, for the bi-weekly pay period of the 1st through the 14th, the actual pay date would be the 20th. And then the 16th through the 20th would be used for gathering and processing the payroll information. The week of the 15th would then be week 1 of the next pay period, and so on. Now, with a semi-monthly payroll, you might have something like a pay period cutoff date of the 15th with a pay date of the 20th. And for the second pay period in the month, a cutoff on the 27th for a pay date of the 31st. And then the 30th and 31st would belong to the next pay period. Now, another challenge with a semi-monthly pay period is doing the calculations when you have employees who are eligible for overtime. If the end of the pay period, for instance the 15th, falls in the middle of a week, you have to calculate any weekly overtime and pay it retroactively on the next payroll. Now, that's all doable, but trust me, payroll is complicated enough without these additional complications. Are you thinking about offering direct deposit? It's convenient, but remember, you can't force employees to use it, and you'll generally be required to fund payroll at least 2 days in advance if you have direct deposit. So be sure to consider any cash flow implications that might happen before committing to the direct deposit option. All right, just when you think you've got it all figured out, payroll can throw you a curveball. For instance, unemployment rates can change yearly, and you might need to handle garnishments, benefit premiums, or retirement plan contributions. And remember, each of these things has its own taxes and withholding rules. So that all brings us to the main question: DIY or outsource? So, what do you think is right for you? Are you ready to take on the world of payroll software, or does handing the whole thing off to a pro sound more like your speed? Well, whichever you choose, remember, staying informed about the basics of payroll is crucial for any business owner, because it's your business, and ultimately, you're the one who's responsible for getting it right. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe and share. And remember, your inspired leadership is the secret sauce to having a high-performance team and a wildly successful business you'll love. I'll see you next time on Leader's Journey.